The political landscape in California continues to shift as we see another notable politician switch parties. Is this sowing seeds that are going to make the future for the Second Amendment in California a little bit brighter? Let's talk about it. Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel today. That is right, the political landscape continues to shift here in California. To talk about it, we have brought back our legislative director. He's also the host of Firing Line Radio. You can find him every Saturday at 1 p.m. on AM 590 The Answer. That, of course, is Rick Travis. Rick, how you doing today? Thanks for coming on.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. And guys, before we get into this today, please be sure to like, share, and subscribe to these videos. It really helps get the information as far and wide as it can possibly go. We're trying to keep this ball moving forward to advocate for our Second Amendment rights, and those likes, shares, and subscribes really help. And hey, guys, also, if you're out of the state of California, that does not mean you cannot be a CRPA member. If you look in the description below, there is a link to become a CRPA member. If you're interested in stopping these laws at ground zero in California, go ahead and become a member. That goes a long way in the fight for legislative and litigative efforts here in the state. So, like I said, we've got the political landscape moving. Let's jump into this. Jacob, can you go ahead and throw the video up here, guys? I got a video. It's really short, and then we'll get into an article and start talking about it.
As of today, and if you have cameras, get them rolling. Share this on social media. As of today, I'm leaving the party of paid protests, purple hair, and pronouns. I'm joining the party of faith, family, and freedom.
Okay, guys, so in case that was difficult for you to hear, that was former LA County Sheriff Alex Villanueva, and he said this: as of today, I'm leaving the party of paid protests, purple hair, and pronouns, and joining the party of faith, family, and freedom. That, of course, is the Republican Party. Guys, we took this from Your News. The article is titled, Former LA County Sheriff Alex Villanueva Leaves Democrat Party, Joins GOP. Jacob, can you throw the article up here? Let's read this really quick, and then we'll get to Rick. So it says this: Alex Villanueva, who was elected sheriff in 2018 on a platform to reform, served a single term before losing re-election in 2022 to Robert Luna, former Long Beach police chief. Over the course of his tenure, Villanueva's political stance shifted more and more conservative as he publicly pushed back against elements of Black Lives Matter movement and adopted a hardline position on crime and public safety. During the COVID-19 pandemic, Villanueva refused to enforce certain public health mandates. He notably rejected the county's directive to close beaches on the 4th of July weekend in 2020 and later declined to enforce an indoor mask mandate, citing that there was a lack of scientific basis. Villanueva's departure from the Democratic Party triggered a wave of reactions across social media. You can see here there's definitely some support, GOP officials welcoming with open arms, but I did want to get to this one. Scroll down just a little bit more. California State Senator Marie Alvarado-Gil, which you guys will probably know, is championing some 2A legislation. She kind of took this exact same path. Also applauded the move, saying in an X post, "Welcome to the right side. Who will be next? I left the Democratic Party because they have lost touch with the everyday American. So many promises broken and enough pandering to Hispanic Californians. Be done and register Republican." Villanueva's party switch comes at a time when growing numbers of Californians are voicing dissatisfaction with the Democrat Party leadership in the state. Whether Villanueva will seek political office again under his new party affiliation remains to be seen. Okay. So that's a whole lot of political stuff going on, and you know, you might be thinking, what does this have to do with the Second Amendment? Well, unfortunately, the Second Amendment is definitely part of the political conversation. So I guess, Rick, the question that I want to throw to you is, we're seeing a huge shift nationwide. When it comes to this stuff, we've got a lot of notable people in the presidential administration, whether it's Trump, who used to be a registered Democrat, Elon Musk, RFK, Tulsi Gabbard. The list goes on and on and on of people who have essentially switched parties and are now advocating politically from the Republican Party. However, you think that there are states that might be insulated from this. You might be thinking of New York, you might be thinking of Oregon or California or even Illinois. Yet we continue to see this stuff in a state like California. Can you speak to the political landscape here in the state at all? I know that we talked about it a little bit when we were covering the 2024 elections. Does that just continue to keep flowing? What does the landscape politically look like here in the state right now?
Well, the election cycle, as you and I've talked both on this show and offline, has changed in California. We are no longer, run an election and have 12 to 14 months of a break and then run the next election. Election cycle is like just ongoing now. It's constant. And it's constant because there is an upheaval. And there's a couple of upheavals I think people are just starting to wake up to. One of them, you mentioned Maria Alvarado-Gil. I had talked to you couple of months prior to her switching party sides, going from Democrat to Republican, that I saw that coming. Was very proud when she stood up. Along with her were several other previous leading Democrats in the state who switched parties. And when we talked then, I told you part of the tide was twofold, and I'll reiterate it. One is there's this perception that somebody that looks like you or looks like me that is non-Hispanic. I mean, I have a second grade grandmother who's Spanish, but that doesn't make me a Latino by any stretch, nor would I claim it. They don't realize that we're not the majority. We haven't been for a quarter of a century. Latinos are the majority in California. And Latinos, for the most part, have been on the Democratic side because, Democratic Party said, oh, we're all about your faith, we're all about your family. The very things that were cited both by Alvarado-Gil and Alex Villanueva. But that's not where they've delivered. Their deliverables have been anti-family, anti-faith, anti-freedom, anti the things that culture believes strongly in. And so as a result, you're seeing a lot of people saying, it's not so much I left the Democratic Party left me. And so now they're moving over. This is one of many reasons I tell people there's about to be a major shift, and we're seeing it in play. We're seeing it in LA County. We're seeing it across the state where there's a lot of different people who are like tapping the brakes on a lot of these leftist policies, even this year in the Capitol, and saying, I can't vote for that. Now, does that always translate for a win for us? No, not yet. But I want to highlight, underline, boldface the words not yet, because that's becoming increasingly closer. I think we're going to see the supermajority broke in one house in this next election in 26. And if it doesn't break in both, it will break in 28. I think the other thing that people have to realize is there's many things like propositions and stuff that take literally an 80% vote. The Dems don't have that. There was a time they did. They don't. That's already gone. So there's a lot of things that we're able to fight back and push hard. I don't think Alex Villanueva is the last Democrat that's going to move across. And I think people have to realize areas like the Central Valley, some of the Central Coast and a lot of those Dems have been Dems because they're more like John F. Kennedy. You mentioned Robert Kennedy Jr. They're more like, their dads. Well, those guys were card-carrying members of the National Rifle Association, hunted, had guns, had firearms. That's not the Democratic Party of today, especially here in California. And, you did mention a couple of the other insulated states, one of those being New York. But Kevin, I would push back on that and say, how insulated is it that, AOC, the congresswoman from New York, who had all these great town hall meetings, who never got booed, who was fawned over and adored. And now her last 3 town halls, she has been booed. She's been called a liar. She's been called a cheat. Like, she is facing one of the toughest elections of her life. People that are holding up things, go back to being a bartender. You're probably better at that. I mean, I'm just saying there is a pushback. There is a wave that's moving.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I guess by insulated, what I meant was there's such a majority, and it's easy for people to go with the majority. So it's definitely interesting, and I agree with you. And these things are happening in these other states, Oregon as well. it's definitely good to continue and see that pushback, continue to see the political landscape shifting. But can you tell me how this necessarily translates to Second Amendment advocacy? I mean, you look at the quote from Villanueva here, joining the party of faith, family, and freedom. I guess you could tie Second Amendment advocacy to the freedom portion of that. But when we're looking at somebody like Marie Alvarado-Gil, she switches from the Democrat Party to the Republican Party, and then this year she ends up championing Senate Bill 818, which is advocating for the preservation of human life against mountain lions in El Dorado County. What is the translation here when we see these politicians switch from one party to the other as far as the 2A advocacy is concerned?
Kevin, that's an excellent question. And one of the things I would say is there are a couple of points. Historically, you could look to Texas, and years ago, Ann Richardson was the governor. She was very anti-Second Amendment. You had Rick Perry, who was a member of their legislature, also anti-Second Amendment. And then we had a massive shooting that took place, a 60 Minutes interview. The people in Texas woke up and said, no more. They voted out the legislature. Several legislators, such as Rick Perry, switched sides, switched party affiliations, and became staunch advocates of the Second Amendment. People put question marks on it, but at the end of the day, Texas moved from very blue to very red. Same thing is, I think, starting to happen here in California. I would say faith, family, and freedom. Let's look at that. Freedom, Second Amendment is part of your Bill of Rights. Those are rights that, according to the framers of the Constitution, were endowed to us by the Creator, which invokes faith. So people of faith would say, yes, I have a right from God to be able to protect myself, which is ensconced in this country in the Second Amendment. And then you would also sit there and say family. And we saw the pushback on Rick Zabur's bill this year, including among some Democrats that said, no, do not go there, when he was trying to remove the Castle Doctrine, the right of self-defense, for many Californians in Assembly Bill 13, I believe it was 1333, and that bill has effectively died. And so I think the tie-in is very easy to see on the Second Amendment with the words that Alex Villanueva used. Got to speak with Alex. He's got a new book out titled Sheriff that tells you all about how lawfare and exactly what the corrupt leftists did to fight him on everything that he tried to do for the people of California. It serves as a template. It serves as something that should be nothing but talking points for anybody who cares about this state and cares about this country and cares about things like faith, family, and freedom. And my biggest warning to everybody is we have a tendency, those of us with conservative values or those of us that might even be considered historically slightly left-leaning, but definitely still all about faith, family, and freedoms, of going, oh, well, we got a great president, or, Marie Alvarado-Gil switched to our side in El Dorado County. I don't have to do anything anymore. That's how we lose. Now is the time that we should be tripling, not just tripling down in this fight, pushing this, supporting these people, listening to these people, spreading the word, because Californians, they've got to be waking up. Their Second Amendment rights have been stripped. We've had lots of groups that claimed that they were on the forefront fighting for us. But I would ask you, it's taken this administration at the national level to point out that our enemy was taking money, taxpayer money, to pay for paid protesters to fight us and strip us of our rights. Where were all these groups when that was going on? Why weren't they sounding the alarm? We're sounding the alarm. We're saying this is what's going on. We're in this fight. We are the dog that is sitting there biting back, constantly looking for every avenue, and we're winning. And now's the time for everybody to start pushing that message. And we need to be the royal pain in the ass to the government and say, no, you need to listen to us, because we can fight harder, faster, and stronger than anything you've ever witnessed before. And we will fire you at the election polls, and we will replace you with right-minded people.
Yeah, definitely. And you're looking at a gubernatorial election coming up in the next couple of years here. And if we were to elect one that we would consider pro 2A, it could look a lot different when all that they get to really use in the legislature is their veto power to veto bills, as opposed to having a legislature that proposes good ideas, especially when the Second Amendment is concerned, that could be signed into law. So there are two very different realities there, even if we get a governor that ends up being pro-2A. Rick, I wanted to shift back to ex-Sheriff Alex Villanueva.
So, yeah, on the governor thing, I mean, obviously it's fluid. There's a lot of ground between where we sit here in May of 2025 and where we will be voting in November of 26. And so I want to acknowledge that for anybody watching this video 6 months from now going, you said, well, I said it on this day. But I mean, if you look at the well over 15, 16 candidates between the two parties and some independents that have declared running, there is only one. There is only one candidate who has said, I believe in the Second Amendment, and done something to demonstratively prove it over and over. And we may get some other candidates that have, and so we can readjust. But right now, the only candidate I know of who said, hey, if I get elected to office, I'm going to increase the number of people that can carry in my jurisdiction a firearm. I'm going to increase all of these rights that people should have. I'm going to decrease the cost, decrease the time, make it easier, is Chad Bianco, who's running right now for governor. There's other people that have talked it, claimed it, filled out forms. I get that. They get a good grade. But if you're looking strictly at the Second Amendment, there's only one person that has produced deliverables that are demonstrable, and also took it from a person that previously held the office that said it couldn't be done and proved it could be. And so, I'm not saying, hey, you got to make your decision to vote right now, but I will tell you right now, if I'm voting, there is only one option.
Yeah, and he has continued, and he still continues to work with groups like ours to make sure that those rights are given to people who deserve them. So definitely agree with you there. And this is the stamp. So that landscape can change just as far as who enters the race, who drops out of that race. But definitely Bianco has been a staunch advocate for the Second Amendment, and he has the action that has backed up his expressed views on that. But let's go back to Sheriff Villanueva for a second. Rick, you've been tasked as a cat herder on many occasions, through CRPA's more recent history here. I'm thinking about things like the Wildlife Conservation Coalition, the Range Coalition. You have been integral in getting lots of groups of people together. You've kind of talked to me about some of the struggles that have been here and there trying to get these groups of people together. But one group that you have been working with collectively are the sheriffs within the state. I'm sort of curious, can you divulge a little bit here? When Sheriff Villanueva was in office, what was it like working with him? And the reason I'm asking is, well, first of all, right now, we got a lawsuit against the LA County Sheriff's Department. We're suing them for the long wait times, as well as the high rates for CCWs in the state. It's pretty easy to look at a county like LA that does continuously produce overwhelming results just as far as the two political parties are concerned on the Democrat side. Can you speak to the working relationship with Sheriff Villanueva when he was in office?
Sure. So, you brought up Sheriff Villanueva served at a time, like many sheriffs did, that was trying in this state because the governor, basically, in my opinion, came about as close as you could to setting up a dictatorship under the COVID mandates. And I know some people might not like it when I say that, but that's my personal viewpoint. And personally, when I went to go work, I was tasked twofold. One, on behalf of CRPA, its members, and the people of California. And secondly, I served, along with about 100 other people, on a committee for President Trump during his first administration to keep vital resources open and available, and one of those was gun stores and ranges. And so obviously the LA Board of Supervisors that leans way left was like all in with the governor, shut it all down. And so, that puts a sheriff in a bind because the sheriff is there to serve the people of the county of Los Angeles. They're the top constitutional officer to uphold the Constitution of the United States. And at the same time, they're supposed to take their lead and direction from the Board of Supervisors, who are also duly elected. So they're displaying kind of that line. And I always recognize that when I'm talking to a sheriff. Villanueva was communicative. We didn't agree at the very beginning of the onset, but as I made points and other people, I didn't do it alone. Again, it was a coalition of us and kept making our points. He listened. And that's the first thing that I would say about Alex Villanueva. He's very good to listen to opposing viewpoints. He considered those viewpoints. And then he did what some people in our community called waffling. He was like, okay, gun stores and gun ranges could be open. Then there was some lawsuit threats, some other things. He's like, okay, we're going to tighten it down. We pushed back. Then went back, I think, 2 or 3 times. And then he said, you know what? No, it's staying open. And I think part of that was the overreach by the governor to close the beaches and do some other stuff. And he's like, no, this is insane. This isn't based on fact. People need to be able to take care of themselves. And he came out and said, no, we're going to keep those stores open. We're going to keep the ranges open. We're going to do that. So he was very workable. It's one of the things I saw him at the event prior to him making the public announcement. And, he flat out said, miss me. And I was like, yep, because Sheriff Luna is not that sheriff. We have tried so many times to reach out to resolve some of the issues before we launched our lawsuit, which we've done with other sheriffs who have been very amenable to that. And Luna couldn't be bothered. He was like, no, I'm on vacation. I'm doing this. I'm doing that. We tried to reach out to some of the people around him and was a block. So it's a very different viewpoint.
Well, yeah, that to me isn't necessarily surprising. I wasn't exactly in regular communication with him when he was sheriff, but there is one thing that I can remember, and you can correct me if I'm wrong here, but there are plenty of opportunities for these departments or these bodies of law enforcement to get together and discuss whether it's new technology, better processes, better ways to do things. One of those topics is CCWs, and there's an annual CCW conference for law enforcement, and Villanueva was the first sheriff LA County to ever send staff to that conference to learn about those processes, because his intent was to dedicate more staff and more money to getting CCWs in. Of course, that was leading up to the election that he ended up losing, but the intention certainly was there. So I'm not necessarily surprised to hear you say how open he was and willing to make the right decision when the correct criticism was brought to him. I guess, Rick, what's your final thoughts on this? Former Sheriff Alex Villanueva switching parties, the political landscape as a whole. How do you see the immediate direction forward, and then maybe also the more long term?
I'll follow up with that. He was, to confirm, yes, he was the first sheriff in LA County to send people to that conference. He was very serious. He had people from other departments that have a very successful CCW program come in and bed with his people to help get that developed. LA County is obviously one of the largest counties in the country. They're one of the largest law enforcement agencies in the country. And so that was very important to get that done and done the right way. He wanted to make sure it was going to be a clean process and an efficient process. And he did that while being fought against quite heavily by a board of supervisors. Didn't want him to go anywhere near that. And I think that's something that sometimes gets lost in our community of not only did he make that change, but that was a heavy change and a costly change. And some would argue part of the reason he didn't get reelected is because the board of supervisors did so many things to put negative things in the press about him that were just factually untrue. Like all the stuff on COVID, we now know that was all lies. We know that Fauci was lying on a lot of this stuff. That's been proven. So, Fauci's admitted to it. Like the whole 6-foot rule. Yeah, I made that up. Okay. So Villanueva wasn't wrong on that and shouldn't have been sued a couple of times on that. So, lawfares were real, and you got to realize that. Where do I see this going? I see it going a couple places. One, Villanueva did not grow up with a political silver spoon like Gavin Newsom. He did not have politics entrusted to him from day one. He comes from a family with a really rough background. It is the same background of many people who have migrated. Those of us that may have been here a couple more generations, but our families came here and they had to eke it out. They had to make it work to get to the American dream. He comes from that kind of background. He is easy for anybody of a Latin American heritage to identify with because he has that shared background. And as he is in the community, waking people up, fellow Latinos and others like us, and saying, hey, this is wrong, this is wrong, this is wrong, and this is why, and move with me to get this done. I think he's a catalyst for change, not unlike Maria Alvarado-Gil and others that are making those changes. And I also think he becomes a catalyst in a way that we're not looking at. And that is, I think there's been a lot of Latin Americans here in California that wanted to get involved in governance, who wanted to get involved in politics, who wanted to make a positive change that we would all agree with, but didn't feel there was enough political cover for them to do so because it was as if you are Latin American, you have to be Democrat. Now they have people that are numerous people inside the state legislature, Congress, and everything else that are Latin American that aren't Democrat and who are getting things done and who are fighting and are beloved by their communities. And so now they're feeling more empowered to make those changes. And I think that's something we need to get behind and we need to support. And finally, the other thing is the Democrats' ability to eviscerate somebody that leaves the party is become greatly diminished. I mean, a couple of years ago, and that would be the tombstone on Time magazine, ex-politician left the Democratic Party, end of political career. It's not the end of a political career. In some respects, it's the rebirth of a more stronger, powerful political career.
Well, definitely some good stuff to look forward to as the landscape continues to shift, arguably, or at least I would argue, in the correct and right direction. So can't wait to continue and watch that happen and continue to contribute to that happening as we will continue to do here at CRPA. Rick, I know you're a busy guy. Thank you very much for coming on and sharing with us.
Always a pleasure to be with you and the community.
Absolutely. And guys, if you like this content and you want to see more, please be sure to like, share, and subscribe to the videos and the channel. It really helps grow the channel, get it out to more and more people. We're trying to move this 2A ball forward here in the state, and as this state goes, we continue to see more and more evidence. So does the rest of the country. So we're looking to do it the right way, and the likes, the shares, and the subscriptions really end up helping. Thanks again, guys, and we'll see you on the next one.